What's up, everybody? This is Esoteric Nomad. I recorded something earlier that I might release, but I wanted to, I was just doing my nightly wind down, talking to spirit. If you're in the spiritual community, maybe you do this too. It's like in today's society, it has become increasingly harder to find genuine connections. And when I say genuine connections, it's spiritually fulfilling connections. And we might find them, but it'll be somebody who is, in another state, miles away. If we're lucky, they're in our state. But even then, I consider, having myself a good spiritual friend who lives, in the same city as me. And yet when you're on this spiritual journey, you oftentimes don't want to go out. So it's it's grateful for it, of course, but it's I'm realizing that even with, the connections nearby, it's integration, especially once you've been in hermit mode, a spirit often puts us in to, help us self-reflect, to become more in tune with our own frequency and our own energy, to heal, because healing, in my experience, takes solitude. It is not to say you can't heal around other people if you have if you live in a big family or if you have roommates, not to say you can't heal if you are around other people. I'm just saying that oftentimes, even if you live your living situation, you're surrounded by people, you might go through periods of time where you feel more secluded and introverted, and you might stay in your room or spend more time to yourself. And that's still a type of hermit mode that spirit will put us in to pull us away. There's so much energy in the world, so much bullshit happening everywhere, that it's we lose touch with who we are. It becomes too easy to forget our own essence, in a sense, and so it's spirit will seclude us for many reasons. But in my experience, one of the main ones for me has been to heal, to self-reflect. Because if you're like me, maybe it's an empathic thing, weigh in on the conversation. But it's it's really easy for us, especially if we're in big families, if we're around other people, to become really consumed in other people's lives. And it's not necessarily in a sense of trying to be, possessive or just controlling or anything. But it's when you pick up on so many subtle undertones of other people, especially people you care about, it can become really easy to become focused on what they're doing and their spiritual growth and their happiness and their everything. And not that that's a bad thing, but that can become imbalanced, and we start focusing so much on other people, and then that'll oftentimes cause troubles in those relationships. And it also takes the focus off of ourselves in a lot of cases. This was my experience, and I think that's why I can speak confidently on this, is that I realized spirit needed to put me in time out. Legitimately, it was you come over here and sit quietly for a while and get used to your own energy, start to love yourself again, regain your independence, fall back in love with yourself, etc., etc. It might be perceived as oh, I lost all my friends, or I have no more connections, or I'm so alone, and it will feel that way. It will feel that way. But, ultimately, I think as you start to heal, you also start to realize simultaneously, yes, you might still feel loneliness, but you also see the benefit of it. Therefore, it takes the edge off of that loneliness when you realize that, this is for a purpose. Now, and everything, remain balanced, and don't do and I'm talking to myself right now as well. Get to the point where you are so hyper independent and so comfortable in your own energy that you're just well, fuck everybody else. I only want to be around people who, it's if you're better, not better than my own peace, but if you contribute to my peace, or give me more, if you, what am I trying to say? Yeah, if your energy is super, you're pouring into my cup, we all know that phrase. You have to be on that frequency. You can't be someone who is taking from my energy, because already in our jobs and passing people on the streets, our energy is being siphoned in so many ways. People talking shit about us. Our energy is being siphoned, or it can be. And so it's yeah, sorry, there's a lot coming to me right now. And so I forget what I'm saying sometimes, but yes, all of that. But yeah, I needed to be put in timeout, and not timeout in a negative sense. I mean, a lot of that, there was some, like slapping me on the hand. There was some of that because I was just doing the most, too focused on everybody else, too focused, especially in relationships, on what that other person is doing and their spiritual growth, like I was saying earlier. Like, and it's all from a place of love, but even from a place of love, it's like, bitch, what am I doing? Am I focusing on myself? And so it's been a little over a year for me that I have been put in seclusion, and I've had periods of time where I thought I wanted, relationships, and it's not to say I didn't want the relationships, but it's like there was times where I think Spirit allows us to have what we think we want, to realize that, that's not what we want. There's still growth that can occur when we're realizing what doesn't work for us. There is still growth. We often fixate on like, well, I don't know what works. I don't know what but there's epiphanies and realizations and growth in the, I know what I don't want. I've learned, I've had so many experiences where it's like, yeah, I have a good, strong list of what I don't want. And in that, you can just, say the opposite. Well, if this didn't work for me, this is what I want. And so in realizing what doesn't work for us, there is just as much growth and advancement that we can make, as if, just as if we were to figure out for sure what does work for us. It's just sometimes we have to weed through what doesn't work to single it down to like a list of 5 of what does work, because there's just so much out there in the world today, and we're all so different in so many ways. And so it's like, let's single it down, sift through the bullshit, and see what's left, once we've shifted all the, like, I imagine one of the sifters, like, when people used to mine for gold and they're like digging in the riverbeds and like sifting the dirt and the sediment out, and then, the gold is left if there was any. And so it's like, it's kind of like that. You have to sift through all the shit you don't want and to see what's left, the gold on the surface. But yeah, I just wanted to, if you're new to this podcast, I go on tangents. Hopefully you can follow. If not, then maybe listening to me is not for you. And there's millions of other, people, spiritual people, channelers, tarot readers, whatever out there that will, be more suited to your preference. But I am all over the place when I feel like I'm channeling. And so with that, I just had a realization that I am gonna be perfectly okay. Let me tell you guys about the year that I have fucking had. Let me tell you about my life in general. Like, first of all, living independently has been, a newer thing for me. It happened briefly years ago, over a decade ago. But soon after I got my own place, I moved in a girlfriend that I had at the time, and, whatever else ensued. But I have recently, just within the last 2 years, lived by myself independently, and there was fear going into that. One, because I had been used to being around people, and when we're around people, family, loved ones, we often become codependent, and that was something that happened with me. I became very codependent, and not in like the obvious ways that I thought codependency was. I was like, if you would have told me I was codependent, I would have been like, get the fuck out of here. No, I'm not. Like, that just means like, you're waiting on somebody hand and foot, and like, oh, I can't do anything without them. But it's not even always that drastic. A lot of times codependency is just like not holding each other accountable and accepting the bullshit. A lot of times codependency is just, I got to the point where it was like, I had been used to taking trips to the store by myself at one point in life. Most of my life, if we're weighing it on a scale, has been done independently. But when you're around someone like, a partner or family, it's like little things you start to coexist so much that it's like the little things you get used to doing with people, eating with people, going out with people. Like I said, even it's to the store, like, oh, I got to run to the gas station. You want to ride? It's little things like that. So much to the point that when you don't have that anymore, it can feel daunting. And do not, like there can be shame with that. There can be like, well, I'm a grown-ass adult. Like, why do I feel fear in going out by myself? That's completely natural, especially if we've been used to being in dynamics where there's been so many fucking people around us. We've always had a partner or somebody, a buddy to, travel and do little side quests with. So when you're finally on your own, that shit is like, it's like, it's brand new and it can be scary. And I just want to emphasize that it's okay to feel that way. There's no shame in that, and that you should not feel shame in that because it's completely natural. I think those things happen to remind us that we are capable and that, we can do things on our own. And so with that said, when I moved out initially, there was excitement. There was a lot of things going on at the time where it was like I really felt like Spirit was guiding me away from the situation I was in. And I intuitively felt like I was about to go through this massive transformation that I feel like is still undergoing. But I feel like I've gotten through I've been drugged through this underworld type of initiation, and now it's like I'm starting to see the light. But so there was fear in living independently, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, I'm going to have to get a job. There's no one else financially I can depend on, not to say that there was so much before, there was at times, but now it's like when you live alone, that's it. There isn't nobody. It's not even you're living with someone who it doesn't work. Well, they could get a job. No, now you're not living with anybody but your damn self. So it's like you have to provide for yourself. Those are the thoughts we have. I have to provide. I have to get a job. I have to do this. And let me tell you, so many things have happened for me this year. One of which being that and when I say this year, I'm not even just talking 2024. I'm just talking within the year time. So from last November to now, and you can go back in time from this October to last October. So much has occurred in that span of time. I had so many lessons, one of which being that we have this idea in society that we have to provide for ourselves. That means we have to get a job. We have to work. And a lot of times that's us doing things that we don't want to do, right? We're just going through the motions. We're on autopilot. We're doing these jobs that we have completely so many of us out there are manifesting generators like myself. And so it's we need to be led by our internal that engine that's saying yes, this feels good. And so many of us are going against that and doing things that don't feel good just because, for that sense of security. And don't beat yourself up over this. I'm not saying this is a negative thing. I'm just saying it can become a negative thing if we fall out of balance and get into the habit of thinking that that is the only way that we can provide and that we will be okay. And I realized this year that I can do absolutely nothing. And with enough faith and spiritual growth, God really does provide. And I say God, but you can substitute your higher power, source, the universe, whatever your higher power is. I'm just speaking of what it is for me. I think, God is still God. In my opinion, God is still God. And then we have spiritual guides, we have angels, we have ancestors, we have all the other things as well. It's all one system. I don't think it's either or. And so in that, let me tell you guys, I have been working. Even when I was working, I was barely making enough. So I was worried and freaking out. And, I have a tendency to overanalyze and worry and have anxiety over things, especially surrounding my sense of security, because I wanted to prove to myself that I could do it. So, when, I'm struggling, there's that fear coming up of oh my God, am I going to be able to maintain? What's going to happen if I don't? I don't have anybody to fall back on. There's not family for me to call up. There's not, I was secluded entirely. I had lost a lot of former connections. So it's okay, now I don't have friends to rely on. This is just me. I'm in a state where it's I'm not from here. Yes, I've been here for about 5 years, and yet it still feels I'm somewhat new. And so it's yeah, I'm really on my own. All right. And so it's when I have this job, I'm literally paycheck to paycheck, and I have nothing, I can't treat myself to anything. I'm not going places. I'm not, paycheck to paycheck, where you're just paying bills and barely doing that. And that was me for the first quarter of the year. And then my job ended in May, and I went through the entire summer, just recently started working again, last week, went through the entire summer with no income. And let me tell you guys, my rent was paid. I had food to eat. Now, as far as the treating yourself and having, fun things to do, that was limited. I was fortunate to have certain connections and, associations where I still was able to occasionally get out and experience things, just enough. I feel like Spirit was really still looking out, because it was giving me just enough to keep me from going completely feral, giving me enough socialization and enough, time, out in the wild, so to speak, to, remind me that, I'm not completely alone out here, and, I can still enjoy life. And so it taught me that, for one, I didn't have to bust my ass in, something just to survive. For two, that I could find the pleasure in life without having any currency at all. I got more in touch with my creative side and started doing more art and, going out in nature and having a hell of a lot of time to meditate and just sit quietly with Spirit and really, a lot of me time to, do the self-reflection and therapy and all of that. And I'm somebody who's like really into like the self-help books and, doing all that stuff. And so when I tell you I had plenty of time, I had plenty of time. But I haven't had a job since May. And that's May to June, June, July to August, September to October, and October to November. 6 months where I had no job. Now, the only thing that I would say that I lost was I had a vehicle, had a loan out, was making payments, ridiculously high payments, and was not able to keep up with that. And I did lose that car. But here's where I'm starting to see more clearly the light in the gift in that experience, is that for one, I was paying $575 a month for that and struggling. So it was like I had this car. It was a blessing, but it was also a burden. Not to mention I got the car during a time in my life that I believe that Spirit was trying to move me on from and heal from, and to sort of just leave in the past in a sense, just like not carrying anything from that time into this new version of myself. And so there's that. And, like that car to me was attached to my self-worth in a sense. I didn't realize it at first, but it really was, because that was my independence. I was proud of myself for getting it. It was like, it was a nice car. I kept it nice. I used to detail cars, so I made sure to keep it clean. I was proud of that. But like I said, there were so many expenses with that, the registration and everything. And I had so many tickets for not getting the registration in time. And it was just like the debt had built up so much that it was like, yes, I have a car, but fuck, like there's so much attached to that. And it was removed. And, at the time I really struggled with it, because it's like when we have an attachment to something and Spirit is trying to take it out of our lives, when we cling to it, is what makes those times even harder. And I was clinging so hard. I was like, that's my independence. That's my baby. That's my sense of achievement. I'm a failure if I lose it, yada, yada. What are people going to think? Heavy on the what are people going to think? Like, oh, she lost her car. Ha, 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 ha. But fuck that, because, they're going to get their karma from that. But, still, we care what people think. We do, even if a small percentage of it. And so there was a lot of components. I did lose that. But here's, like I said, the light at that. Now, all I have to do is worry about paying my rent. And I have a job where I can do that easily. I don't have any other bills. Like you might say, well, yeah, you have a repo on your credit now and you have to pay this, that, and then that. Yeah, sure. And I'm going to make payments and all of that. But here's my other thing also. Like, we are here to have, and I'm not here advocating for someone to just like rack up debt and not pay it. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think we place entirely too much. We get too consumed in the debt that we owe, when it's like, this is all a fucking simulation. It's not real. So the second we pass on, the last thing I'm going to be thinking about is that repo on my credit. That's the last thing. And it's not even going to matter. You know what I mean? Like, the shit that happens during this incarnation matters. It does. And then it doesn't, because it's so fleeting and it's all a dream and it's so momentary. And I know if you haven't had an experience, and especially if you're atheist, which, no problem if you are. I'm just saying, I imagine if you have not had any type of spiritual experience, and if you're atheist and don't believe in anything higher than yourself, then it is probably extremely hard at times to really feel like blasé about the bullshit that happens in life, because there's more emphasis, I would imagine. I'm not saying this for certain. This is just my thoughts on the subject. If I was atheist, I feel like I'd struggle, because, I believe in God and I still struggle to believe. So it's like, I could only imagine if I had no faith. But yeah, so it's like, I'm not like, oh my God, because I have student loans. Yes, there's things I'm concerned about, but I am not like, oh my God, like, oh, I have all this debt, because it's like, yeah, okay. Like, I feel like if I maintain it, you know what I'm saying? I hope I'm wording this okay. Like I said, I'm not trying to advocate for just like, I'm not saying go get a credit card and just run it up and fuck it, because we're only here for a moment in time. No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, if you already have debt, if there's things that are like, like not legally affecting you, like we all have student loans, but like it's rarely legally affecting us. Yes, we try to make payments, but a lot of times we're just getting harassed by bill collectors and stuff like that. For a lot of us, at least. I'm not speaking for everyone. I'm just saying, let's be mindful of the weight we place on a lot of these things that are meant to make us feel less than. Like debt is meant to make us feel like we're in a hole. Therefore, we will attract that mentality and that energy and probably remain in that hole. Like, we have to be mindful of those things. And I'm talking to myself as well, because there was a time in life when I was like really consumed with like getting my credit right. I gotta have good credit, great credit, blah, 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 blah. And yeah, I'm still trying to do that, but I'm not obsessed with it anymore. I can still find happiness knowing that there's things that, you know, I need to work on. That's more of what I'm trying to say. Like, let's still find the silver lining and the bliss in life without being consumed in the fact that, oh, we have student loans, for example, or, oh, I have this credit card bill debt, or I have, you know, like whatever, I have a repo on my credit. Like, that's not attach these things to our self-worth or our sense of identity. Maybe that's a better way of saying what I was trying to say. Because yes, absolutely, like, be mindful and smart financially. Like, it's like a good skill to have. So I did lose my vehicle, but like I said, now I don't have the car payment. I don't have to worry about insurance because I don't have a vehicle right now. The bus route in Denver is amazing, in my opinion, and I have an easy route to and from work. You know, like, it's, and I realize, like, this is not everybody's situation. I am simply talking about my situation, because when I tell you guys the amount of worry and stress and anxiety and existential crisis that I experienced throughout this summer, child. Like, everything was on hold in my mind. Nothing mattered but the fear of being homeless. Nothing mattered but the fear of losing my vehicle. I thought I was about to be on the streets with no car, and I was going to lose all my items. You know, I have animals, so I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do with my animals? How am I going to survive? Oh my God, this and that, I'm going to be homeless. No, and the entire time, and this is the cool thing, and this is why I believe I had to be put in isolation to begin with, is to get back in touch with my inner compass. And Spirit was telling me, you're going to be okay the entire time. Now, I would get, you know, a notice from my landlord, or like when I was getting that notice that, like, you know, your car payment's due, otherwise we're going to take it by this date. That's when I would start to freak out, because it was like those reminders in the 3D and the matrix of like, this deadline is looming. And when a deadline is looming, it is far too easy to say, fuck faith, and freak out. It's too easy. You know, we're human. We still have human nature. And I was in full freak out mode, y'all. Like, for real, like crying to my therapist, crying to friends, pacing around my apartment, like constantly consulting my tarot cards, like, I need an answer. And through the whole thing, intuitively in my gut, I felt peace. But I kept ignoring that peace at times, because I would get those reminders. I'd get another letter. You know, it was like the cycle of up and down of worry and calm and anxiety and freak out and panic and calm. The ebb and flow, the up and down, the roller coaster was relentless. Like, it was like I need medication. And mind you, doing this predominantly sober. I say predominantly because I am no longer taking my drug of choice, but like I would occasionally have a drink, you know, occasionally have an edible, you know, those types of things. But even then, it's been months since those things now. So I say predominantly sober because for me, and like if you're in recovery from a substance, you know what I mean. Like, just because you're in recovery from a substance doesn't always mean that you're abstinent from all things deemed substances. You know what I mean? Like, I'm still smoking cigarettes. Well, not cigarettes, but vaping. You know what I mean? Like, and this is a whole nother tangent I could go on in with the AA community. Like, we all have our processes, just like we all have our spiritual paths and our avenues to get there. In sobriety, we all have our paths and avenues to get there. We shouldn't judge each other. We shouldn't look down on each other. Some people are in medically assisted treatment, like I am. You know, some people are taking ketamine therapy. Some people are dosing. You know, fuck what you're doing. As long as it's helping you and you're growing and you're healing, more fucking power to you. I am not going to turn my nose up at it. Now, there was probably a time when I might have judged somebody because it wasn't the way that I would do it, but fuck that. It's not supposed to be the way that I would do it. Some people are going to do things the way I do them, and other people aren't. That's life. There's far too many people on the planet for us all to do shit the same way. Like, let's think about that. That applies to so many things. Like, there's one God and only one true way to go. Come on. There's too many states of consciousness, and we know this because we exist in the world, right? We all have a coworker, and it's like, how have you survived life this long? We all know somebody like that, where it's like, that's a different level of consciousness. They're too consumed in the matrix. They're, you know, obsessed with reality TV. And I'm not saying if you like reality TV, you're, you know, at a low level of consciousness, but I'm just saying, the things that we're focusing on can often be very strong tells for like, what am I trying to say? For just for our level of consciousness, really, like what's important to us, is material wealth the only thing that matters, or is material wealth include, or is wealth just wealth, like happiness, self-awareness, being at peace within yourself? Is that more of what matters? I believe that's where real wealth is when you can find happiness with absolutely nothing and no one. Not to say you want to be stuck with nothing and no one, but if you can find contentness and happiness in those spaces, you're fucking invincible, man. And I really believe that's where Spirit is trying to get me to be. I say I'm still in this process, but that's where I've been. Like, I was isolated, set apart, heartbroken. I was put through all these situations to drag me through these emotions because, for one, I had been avoiding a lot of emotions. And I'm sure that's the same for a lot of people. I've always been someone who has really loved to dive deep and ask those deep questions. And even in that frame of mind, I was still avoiding so many parts of myself. And, there's still work I have to do. Absolutely. So I'm just saying, you can still be a person that's like, oh yeah, you might say to yourself, I enjoy, getting deep. Oh, I hate superficial this and that. But you might still be ignoring parts of yourself that you really need to face and heal. And that's human nature, it's just, I always say that we all have our shit. It's just being willing to become aware of that shit and to face it and to work on healing it, not to say you got to heal in an instant, in the snap of a finger, but that you're working on it and that you're willing to discover those things within yourself and others and have compassion. I believe that's a game changer right there. If I meet somebody like that, I automatically feel like I consider them in my tribe, because I know that's that warrior spirit, when you've been through hell and you're not letting that hell define you, and you're not letting that hell just sit dormant and affect your life in all these known and unknown ways, and you're just accepting it or numbing it. And I'm not saying any of this to shame anybody or make anybody feel bad if you are in a position where you're not really wanting to dive deep yet. That's part of your journey. And I think that's the beautiful thing that Spirit has shown me this year too, is that we're all on different paths, and not all of us in this lifetime are going to be meant to, excavate those deeper emotions. Some of us, maybe we did that in a past lifetime, and in this one we just wanted to come and, be good people, but live quietly and just you know what I mean? Not everybody is going to seek enlightenment, and that's okay. But when I say Spirit had my back this year, and I'm saying all of this to provide a message of hope to anybody who's out there struggling, and to say, if you're focusing on yourself, if you're trying to better yourself, if you're really trying to be better than you were the day before last, if you're really trying to show compassion towards yourself and others and heal and grow and better yourself, if you're really working hard, if you're really you know what I'm saying? My mind is always going. I feel like my mind is like a fucking computer. It's always analyzing, downloading, rebooting, cross-examining. It's doing everything at once. And not everybody is like that, and that's okay. But if you're like me, it's you may feel am I doing any work? Well, it feels like just going through the day and just processing emotions, and the inner dialogue that I have with myself is the work. The things that I think about in a given day, it would fill up a fucking book, so it's a lot of us are doing the work internally in our minds, as we sit at our desks. It's not to always say you have to be deep in meditation, or you have to be at a spiritual retreat, or you have to be doing these things. We all are learning and evolving in our own ways. I'm just saying, I feel like if you're conscious of it and you're really making that effort, that you're really going to see the fruits of that. And that's really where I've been since, for a little over a year now. And, facing emotions, things coming up from childhood, traumas, every fucking thing you can imagine being thrown at me, but still sitting in that energy of okay, I'm not saying I can just trust you, God. I can't just snap my fingers and boom, there's the trust. I don't fear anymore. I'm fine. Just because I logically know that I should trust and have faith that everything's going to be okay doesn't mean that it's going to be that fucking easy. But what I've realized is that the process of having those emotions, those doubts, the process of having doubts and the process of having fears, and then coming back to the realization that I need to trust, and the process of being afraid and, being at my wit's end and, yelling at God, like, why am I going through this? And then coming back to a position of faith. That back and forth, that ebb and flow, that light and dark is all part of the growing process. A lot of times, because the process is messy and painful and uncomfortable and we're crying and snotting and alone, we feel like we are abandoned, when really that's often if not always, part of the process. Like, we have to go through that. We are meant to experience the full range of our human emotions. In experiencing that full range of our human emotions, we are learning things. Now, we may not even always be conscious of this. This is something else that Spirit has revealed to me, that we're not always going to be aware of everything that we've grown in. Sure, it's great to, but if you're like me, it was like the things that I could take note of, like, oh, I got sober from this. That was my growth. Or I did this. That was my growth. Check that off. Like, that was what I thought I had grown, and like no more, no less. But what I'm realizing is that there's so much in between then. Just, having the full range of my emotions and like little things going on underneath the surface that I may not be able to identify, but like I'm being put, since I've been in hermit mode and, now getting back out into the world, and I'm being put in situations, and I'm realizing that full range of my emotions has like conditioned me to react differently in so many situations. And I had no idea this growth was even happening. No idea. Because, when we're crying and like, feeling like we're giving up on life, we can't, it's hard to think like, am I growing right now? Like, no, this feels terrible. This doesn't feel like growth. This doesn't feel like I'm healing. This doesn't feel like I'm evolving. How is this growth? How is anything beneficial happening for me? Well, I'm here as living proof that yes, like through all of that, we are evolving and growing. And it's often very subtle and underneath the surface and quiet and, not obvious, but it's happening. So give yourself credit for that. And, like I'm in a position now where it's like, I just got this job, but it's just in time. I got the late notice for the rent, but I'm going to have 2 checks before the time that rent's due, and I'm going to be fine. And now I have a job. And so I'm like, I no longer have to worry about that financially. And this past summer, all those months when I wasn't paying rent, I was fortunate to get rental assistance. Like, I've been blessed, and I realize this is not everybody's experience. But like I said, I'm saying all of this because I really want to emphasize that, like, faith and prayer fucking works. And it might sound corny to say, it might, there might be people rolling their eyes like, I pray and I do all of this. Well, you could be worse off. You could be worse off than you are. So what's to say that prayer isn't working? Just because it's not happening in the timing we want, just because it's not happening in the ways that we want, does not mean that there is not a plan. Because when I tell you, like at the beginning of the summer, when I didn't have a job, when I had no money, looking far into the year, like back in May when I was like thinking about this time, November, December, I was like, fuck, what is going to happen if I don't get a job? I haven't had a job the whole summer. Spirit found a way. I got the rental assistance, like there was times here and there where I got help from friends that helped, hold me over with like little things that I needed to, toiletries, dog food, cat food, things like that. Spirit always found a way to sprinkle in something to sustain me. And I didn't always realize that because it was like, God, I'm just barely making it. I'm just barely clinging on to life. So it doesn't feel like this is a victory. This doesn't feel like this is a blessing. This doesn't feel like my prayer is working, but I could have been worse. I could have been kicked the fuck out and on the street. You know what I'm saying? So much I've learned this year. And I am saying all of this because I really want to just encourage anybody who's going through a hard time to stay faithful. Fuck, please don't live. Our faith and our hope is our superpower because we co-create our realities. I think a lot of people say that we create our realities, but they forget that there is other energies out there we co-create. And this is my opinion. And my opinion might evolve and change and you might feel differently. I'm just telling you what works for me. I believe we co-create. And so it's like with that faith and with that perseverance. And, there was times where it was like I viewed my breakdowns, my mental breakdowns and freakouts The times when I was expressing anger towards God, I didn't see that as persevering. I felt like, well, I'm failing because I'm not staying faithful. But I think faith is meant to oscillate. I feel like faith is meant to go through ups and downs. That's the test of our faith. And, that's how we grow and evolve, because I haven't quite, figured it all out to word it, but I just know that, like, we're meant to go through the ups and downs. We're meant to, because if we're always on one level, then it's like, I feel like we can miss out on vital pieces of information that help us grow. Not to say we can't grow when things are fantastic for a long time, but I believe that we learn the most and we heal in really profound ways when we are tested and drugged through the mud. Fucking hate it, but when you're on the upswing of it, it's like, man, that was a beautiful experience. It can be like, man, this is a beautiful experience that taught me a lot. So like I said, like, this is to encourage those people out there who are thinking about starting their own company and don't want to work a 9-to-5 anymore. Like, for some of us, it's okay, and that's all right if you want to work for somebody. But for those who really feel intuitively guided to quit, but you're worried about finances, when I tell you, if you have faith and you are putting that effort in there and you are showing the universe that, like, I trust you, man, the shit is fucking magic. It's fucking magic. Because I thought I was going to be homeless this year. I thought I was going to, and I did lose my vehicle. That's, it's like, I still view that as like a soft spot because I loved that car. But you know what? Like, I have been blessed in so many other ways. Oh my goodness, the connections I've made, the growth within myself. Like, I am in love with myself now. Not to say I don't still have work, but like the place that I am now, I have never been in my entire life, And so to still experience loss and to still be able to acknowledge the growth within yourself and to still be able to smile and like wake up in the morning. And I'm not saying that this is a consistent thing. Like, every morning I just wake up clicking my heels and singing with the birds. No, but more often than not, I am in a place of gratitude. And that's so beautiful because, y'all, like, if you knew me, man, suicide attempts, self-harm, addiction, homelessness in the past, like, faith works. Faith and prayer works. Like I said, we have an expectation as human beings that I say a prayer, I'm going to see a result. Boom. And if we don't see that result, fuck it, prayer doesn't work. Or this person wasn't healed, so, God hates us. Or, we make these wild assumptions because we're working with a human mind, like when we're in our spiritual forms, we'll understand the true essence of things. But God bless us in this life, on earth. As human beings, we are working out of our human brain. And then, that's why I believe that, people, Christians call it the Holy Spirit, like your higher self, whatever you choose to identify it as. If you're leading more out of that energy of faith and believing in that and going through that, that modality, then you realize that, like, not everything is going to unfold the way you want it to, but that it is still for your highest good. And that is hard to accept because a lot of times our highest good may not match what we want in that moment. And, and then we make these conclusions that, like, oh, we didn't get what we want, so it didn't work. But then a couple of years later, we might be able to, in hindsight, see how, like, well, if we had what we want, how that wouldn't have worked. Like, there's all types of little revelations and stuff if we're paying attention and we're able to connect the dots and make the connections, that we'll be able to see that, like, a lot of times, like, when we think prayers aren't working, they are. They're just not working either in the timing that we like or in the ways that we want. And I'm talking to myself still because I am still trying to manifest winning the lottery, and it has not happened yet. And I went through a period of time where I was like, this fucking shit doesn't work. Like, I was really pissed. And now I'm just like, you know what? I feel like, and I make this joke, I feel like the universe, God, in a sense, has a avoidant attachment style to where it's like, if you've ever been in this dynamic with someone who is avoidant attached, it's like when you're chasing, when you're like, ooh, look at me. It's like they're looking the other way, or, there's a running type situation. But when you're more removed and calm, they will come to you. Whether they do or not, there's that desire to, because that's the attachment. And I feel like the universe is like that. The universe is just like, you might want it, but, like, you want it too much. So, no, you don't get it. And I'm not saying this is really how it is. I'm making humor out of this because, God, if we don't make humor out of it, then I'd just be crying a whole lot more. But, I really feel like that's the way it is when we start to just accept the moment for what it is, start to find the beauty in it. And it's not like this is going to be easy and we're not going to be able to do this every day. Like, every time I say this, I can almost hear somebody saying, like, well, maintaining that is damn near impossible, or like it's impossible to stay happy all the time. Yeah. And I don't think we're meant to. I'm just saying, like, coming back to that energy of faith, coming back to that energy of, gratitude and compassion is where the real growth is. If we can redirect once we've been in a position where we're just like, fuck it all, that's still amazing. At least we came back from it. It's not what happens to you, it's how you react to it. All that shit is true. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I feel like I was rambling really fast. Shit was just pouring through me. Like I said, faith and prayer works. Be willing to be honest with yourself about what you are desiring, if it is for your highest good. And then the patience and acceptance is real. I often feel like, as a manifesting generator, and there's many of you out there that are that type. If you don't know what I'm talking about, look up your human design chart. But in manifesting generators, a lot of times we get impatient. We're wanting things to manifest and just appear just like that. And myself included, I'm still like this. I have to constantly tell myself that just because it's not here yet doesn't mean it's not coming. Like that's huge. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I hope this was helpful. It's 40 minutes long. If you tuned in the whole time, bless you. Awesome. Check out my other podcasts and stay safe out there in these cosmic streets. Later.